Chosen one, you win. Not by luck, not by chance, but by divine design. You've defeated them one by one. You dodged the arrows, dismantled the traps, and endured storms meant to drown you. They left you for dead in the dark, but they underestimated one thing. Your fire didn't come from them. It came from within. They betrayed you and tried to bury your name in lies. They mocked your silence, thinking it meant weakness. They twisted your loyalty into something to exploit. But you stood your ground. You walked through hell and came back holding heaven in your eyes. Every fall became a revelation. Every betrayal became a blueprint. You didn't just survive, you were reborn. And now the very people who laughed at your pain are watching in silence, unsure how you're still standing. Stronger, bolder, unstoppable. You didn't come into this world to bow down. You were sent here to break patterns, to burn illusions, to shift destinies. And so, God placed you in the fire, not to destroy you, but to forge you. The storm didn't take you out because the storm was never stronger than the calling inside you. They took everything, but they couldn't touch your purpose. They silenced your name, but they couldn't mute your mission. You waited, you endured, you listened. And when the time was right, you rose. Now look around. The game is over. The masks have fallen. And you, chosen one, you stunned them all. Because while they were busy trying to destroy you, you were busy preparing for your rebirth. And now, it's your turn. Your time. Your era. God is surrounding you. The universe is watching you. And this world, it will not stop you. To every soul who's been watching, listening, and walking this divine path with me, I want to take a moment to say thank you. To everyone who has donated through Super Thanks, I'm truly humbled and grateful for your support. You are helping spread this truth across the world. And even if you haven't donated, please know this: your presence, your energy, and your faith are a blessing beyond measure. Just by being here, you are aligning with this divine frequency. Before we go any further, drop 999 in the comments right now. Send a signal to the universe that you are ready, that your spiritual contract is active, that this isn't just another message, this is your moment. You've waited long enough. You've been quiet long enough. You've endured long enough. Now it's time for truth. It's time for revelation. It's time for your rise. The 12 points I'm about to reveal will show you exactly how you defeated them and why nothing they did could stop you. So stay with me, chosen one. Watch until the very end, not just as a listener, but as a loyal warrior of light. Be still and listen closely, because this is your story. And the whole world is about to see why you were chosen. God's chosen ones, your team won, but you've fucked everyone who ever doubted you. First, you didn't care about anyone. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the voices of the crowd never reached your soul? Why their whispers, their judgments, their cold shoulders never pierced through your purpose? From the very beginning, you were built differently. Not to conform, but to rise. People talked, they pointed, they mocked, they laughed when you walked alone, and yet you kept walking. Why? Because something deep within you refused to bow to anything less than truth. While they were busy trying to fit in, you were busy becoming who you were always meant to be. You never asked for permission because your calling was never up for public vote. They tried to measure you with rules you never agreed to. They wanted you to be smaller, quieter, more manageable, but you weren't sent here to be manageable. You were sent here to move mountains. Have you noticed how your silence shook rooms more than their loudest opinions? That's not weakness. That's divine restraint. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. In that stillness, you weren't losing. You were aligning. You weren't backing down. You were rising from within. Think of Vincent van Gogh. He painted in obscurity, ridiculed and dismissed. He sold only one painting in his lifetime, but now his works are priceless, immortal. They mocked him then, but the silence of his struggle became a roar that echoed through time. That's what your silence has done. It has become a thunderclap from heaven. Your path was not built by applause. It was paved in moments when no one clapped, no one stayed, and no one believed. You kept walking not because you had proof, but because you had presence. And now your presence unsettles them. Why? Because it reminds them of the version of themselves they gave up on. It reflects their compromises, their fears, and their comfort zones. But you, chosen one, you walked where they were afraid to crawl. They said you were too quiet. You became the loudest thing in the room without opening your mouth. They said you are not, but your existence itself said, I am. And is that not exactly what God said to Moses? I am that I am. Exodus 3:14. You carry that same divine declaration in your spirit, not needing to prove, just needing to be. Harriet Tubman heard the call while others heard chains. She escaped slavery and returned multiple times to guide others to freedom. She didn't need the crowd's permission. Her footsteps answered the cries of those still in darkness. Like you, her silence held maps. Like you, her no to oppression was a yes to destiny. Your journey has never been about defiance for its own sake. It's been about obedience to something higher. When people dismissed you, you didn't retaliate with words. You responded with transformation. That's why their attacks never reached your core. You were rooted in something they didn't understand. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Isaiah 50 verse 8. Your vindication didn't come from fighting back. It came from becoming undeniable. Consider Frida Kahlo. Her pain became paintings. Her body broke, but her spirit painted worlds the world could no longer ignore. She didn't need to explain herself. She simply became more herself. So did you. You let the pain carve wisdom. You let the silence mature into vision. And you let their doubt fertilize your resilience. Now, chosen one, you've become a mirror to the very ones who once tried to shatter you. They look at you and see everything they tried to suppress. Your steps now speak louder than their speeches. And the irony? You haven't even begun to speak yet. This is what divine reversal looks like. Those who tried to erase you now find themselves erased in your presence. Not because you sought revenge, but because you stayed true. Second, you never denied yourself. Chosen one, why is it that being yourself is the most dangerous thing you can do in a world addicted to imitation? Why does authenticity feel like rebellion when it should be the baseline of existence? From the beginning you were pushed to shrink, to soften, to bend. Be like them, they said. Smile more, speak less, don't show too much fire. But every time you tried to dim your flame, your soul revolted. You weren't built for conformity. You were built for covenant. You didn't deny yourself, even when it cost you love, comfort, or belonging, and that's what set you apart. While others morphed into versions acceptable to the crowd, you held on to the divine fingerprint within. They offered you love on the condition of self-erasure, but you knew deep down, conditional love is just well-disguised control. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Galatians 1:10. You chose the harder road, the road of integrity, the road that left you standing alone, but standing whole. Think of Amy Winehouse. Her voice was raw, her pain visible, her authenticity unfiltered. The world loved her sound but feared her truth. She paid the price of honesty in a world allergic to it. So did you. They called you too much, too loud, too deep, too intense, but you were never too much. You were just too real for those who had settled for shadows. And in staying real, you didn't lose yourself. You found yourself. You didn't look in the mirror and see a stranger. You saw a warrior. While they rehearsed masks, you rehearsed truth. While they performed, you persisted. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. That's exactly what you did. You chose to be transformed, not accepted. And now, that transformation radiates from your being. Consider the path of Chadwick Boseman. Quietly battling cancer, he still gave the world some of its most powerful performances. He didn't chase validation. He didn't post his pain. He embodied purpose until the very end. His strength didn't come from shouting, but from knowing who he was. That's the same strength that lives in you. Yes, the cost was high. Loneliness was often your companion, but that loneliness was a womb, not a grave. It birthed strength, conviction, and divine clarity. You saw others losing their essence trying to gain approval. You watched them become ghosts of themselves, alive but not living. But you stayed anchored. Your soul wasn't up for sale, no matter the price. And now, the fruit is beginning to show. Your light pierces more sharply because it was never manufactured. It was forged. You didn't copy anyone, and now no one can copy you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1:5. You weren't just different. You were designed. Take inspiration from the life of Prince. He refused to be controlled by record labels, even changing his name to a symbol to reclaim his identity. He knew who he was, even when the world didn't. So do you. You wore your difference like armor, not shame. You didn't change to be loved. You remained yourself and became undeniable. So now, chosen one, your light shines, not because you sought the spotlight, but because God lit you from within. You didn't deny yourself, so God didn't deny you. And as the world starts to turn its head, they'll say, "You changed." But the truth is, you simply became undeniably you, and there's no going back. Third, you have learned to forgive, but you have not forgotten. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the deepest wounds never really vanish, but somehow they stop hurting the way they used to? Why certain betrayals still live in your memory, not to torment you, but to teach you? You carry the echoes of harsh words, broken promises, and moments when the people closest to you turned away at the exact moment you needed them most. You remember it all, not because you are bitter, but because you are wise. You remember not to punish anyone, but to protect your own growth. And that, chosen one, is a power few truly possess. You didn't carry grudges like weights. You released them, not because they were light, but because you were strong. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Ephesians 4:31-32. You understood early that holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You weren't about to let that darkness take up residence in your soul. Forgiveness, for you, wasn't about denying what happened. It was about denying what happened the power to destroy you. Nelson Mandela once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." He forgave the very people who imprisoned him for 27 years, not because he forgot, but because he knew freedom couldn't live where hate still ruled the heart, and so do you. You forgave, not to free them, but to set yourself free. You realized that your scars weren't signs of defeat, but seals of survival. You carried them like medals, each one whispering, "You made it." Every time someone betrayed you, a deeper truth woke up inside you. You didn't go back to the same betrayal twice. You stopped knocking on closed doors. Why? Because you grew. You were not only healing, you were learning. And that learning became a wall of sacred strength around your heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. You didn't harden your heart, you fortified it. Consider the life of Malala Yousafzai. Shot for simply pursuing an education, she could have chosen hatred. Instead, she chose forgiveness and became a global voice for peace and learning. She remembered, but she let her memory fuel action, not vengeance. You too have turned your memories into meaning. The pain didn't poison you, it purified you. You didn't stay down, you got up again and again. And with each rise, you carried more wisdom in your bones. You've become someone who walks through fire without the world even noticing the smoke. People see you're calm now, but they don't realize it was forged through storms they couldn't have survived. But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord. Jeremiah 30:17. And he did. He used your heartbreak to crown you with strength. Now, you walk lighter, not because the past didn't happen, but because you refused to let it own you. You didn't erase the memories, you transformed them into messages, and that's why no one can use your past against you anymore. You carry your story like a sword, not a scar. You remember, but you remember as someone who has already won. Fourth, you have learned patience. Chosen one, what kind of strength does it take to wait in silence while the world demands you to move, to shout, to react? Have you ever felt like everything around you was rushing, spiraling, crashing, and yet something inside you said, "Not yet, be still"? In a world that idolizes instant gratification, you chose to take the long road. While others were sprinting for quick wins, you were cultivating deep roots. You understood that patience isn't passivity, it's preparation. You waited, not because you lacked power, but because you knew power that rushes often crumbles. You stood still in storms, not because you were blind, but because your vision reached further. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Psalm 27:14. You waited through nights that felt endless, through dreams that seemed forgotten, through prayers that echoed without answer, but you never gave up. Even in the silence, you believed. Like Abraham, you trusted in what you could not yet see. God promised him a son, but made him wait decades for Isaac. Many would have broken under that delay. But Abraham's faith matured in the waiting. Yours did too. While others collapsed under pressure, you stood tall in stillness. While they mocked your patience, you nurtured your power in the unseen places. Consider the life of Bethany Hamilton. After losing her arm in a shark attack at just 13, she returned to professional surfing with fierce patience and persistence. She didn't rush the healing. She waited. She rebuilt. She believed. That's exactly what you did, chosen one. They thought your stillness meant weakness. They couldn't see the fire growing inside your quiet. People told you to give up. They said, "You're wasting time." But deep down, you knew time spent in preparation is never wasted. You cried, you prayed, you whispered your dreams to God in moments when no one else listened. And He heard you. Because the Lord is good to those who wait for Him, to the soul who seeks Him. Lamentations 3:25. Patience was your battlefield. You weren't just resisting the urge to act. You were waging war against your own doubts, your fears, your despair. That's why your soul matured. That's why, when the reward finally came, you were ready. Maybe it came after the applause had faded. Maybe it came when no one was watching. But it came, and when it did, it was perfectly timed, because God is never late. Think of Maya Moore, one of the greatest basketball players of her generation. At the height of her career, she paused everything, not for rest, but to fight for the justice of an innocent man. She waited. She worked behind the scenes, and justice came, not on schedule, but divinely timed. That's what your life reflects, chosen one. You moved when it was time, not sooner, not later. Now you carry peace in a way few can understand, not because life has been easy, but because patience carved resilience into your bones. You aren't shaken by storms anymore. You are the calm in the chaos, and the world may never understand how you made it through, but they will feel the power in your stillness. Because God made you patient, and now you are unshakable. Fifth, you drew strength from those you lost. Chosen one, have you ever paused to wonder why the people you loved most sometimes became the very ones you had to let go of? Why the strongest connections faded, not with noise but with silence? Those who once said they'd walk beside you, where are they now? Their absence still echoes in the corridors of your soul. At times it felt like your heart was unraveling piece by piece. One by one the pillars you leaned on disappeared, some by choice, others by fate. And yet, you're still here. You lost people, dreams, plans, parts of yourself, but somehow each loss hollowed out space for something greater. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job 1:21. This wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You were being refined, not by gain, but by loss. Because God wasn't trying to break you, He was trying to lighten you so you could rise. Consider the life of C.S. Lewis. After losing his beloved wife, he wrote one of the most soul-wrenching reflections on grief ever published, A Grief Observed. In that brokenness, Lewis found deeper intimacy with God. His questions didn't lead to answers, they led to presence. That's what happened to you. Your cries didn't always get solutions, but they got sacred silence. And in that silence, you heard God whisper to your wounds. You didn't just lose people, you lost illusions. You lost pieces of the identity others gave you. And with every goodbye, you said hello to another layer of your true self. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147, verse 3. He didn't just mend you, He reconstructed you from the ashes. Each crack in your soul became a channel for light. Each heartbreak became a lesson inked into your character. Think of Stephen Hawking. His body broke down piece by piece, but he never let that stop his mind or spirit. Instead of giving up, he poured himself into science, reshaping how we see the universe. Loss, in his case, birthed legacy. You've done the same. From what was taken, you created meaning. From what shattered, you formed wisdom. You asked God, why me? But what if the pain was never rejection, but redirection? What if every closed door was God steering you inward, back to the only door that matters, the one He placed inside you? Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Psalm 27:10. You were never truly alone. The losses didn't distance you from God. They delivered you to Him. Look at Adele. Her pain from lost love didn't end her. It fueled the songs that touched millions. She didn't pretend it didn't hurt. She allowed the loss to be art, not just agony. You did the same. You didn't just survive. You transformed. And now, you carry the memory of those you lost, not as burdens, but as torches. You walk lighter, wiser, freer. You don't forget, but the pain no longer rules you. You've become someone who opens inner doors others don't even know exist. Because the truth is, chosen one, the greatest growth in your life came not from what stayed, but from what left. Sixth, you realized your own worth. Chosen one, why did it take you so long to see what God had already declared about you? Why did you bend, shift, shrink, just to win applause that never meant anything? You used to want a seat at their table. You tried to please everyone. You changed your tone, your clothes, your truth, hoping that someone would say, you're enough. But one day, something inside snapped. Not in rage, but in revelation. You looked around and realized this wasn't love. This wasn't value. It was performance. You were dancing for people who never saw you. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Galatians 1:10. That's when it hit you. Value doesn't come from outside labels. It radiates from internal truth. Think of Marilyn Monroe. She was one of the most photographed women in history, yet died feeling unseen. Her fame never filled the void of self-worth. You learned what she, tragically, never got the chance to fully grasp. External approval can never replace internal knowing. And you stopped chasing counterfeit crowns. You began to value the voice within. That voice got louder than the applause you once craved. And on the day you chose to stop performing, you began truly living. You saw how the world sells plastic gold, praise that is conditional, love that is manipulative, validation that vanishes. But you remembered, real gold recognizes gold. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139:13-14. That truth became your compass. You weren't too loud, too deep, too wild. You were divinely crafted, and you began treating yourself that way. Look at Keanu Reeves. Despite being one of the most recognizable stars, he lives simply, gives generously, and moves in humility. He doesn't need to prove himself because he knows himself. That's what you stepped into. Quiet power, grounded worth. A value no spotlight could manufacture or destroy. It wasn't easy. They told you to be less, talk less, feel less, but each less was an attack on your divine design. And you finally stood up and said, enough. You looked in the mirror and saw the masterpiece, flaws, scars, and all. And you made peace with every piece. Now, you no longer audition for love. You no longer beg for what is beneath you. You no longer accept crumbs when God prepared a feast. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. 1 John 3:1. That identity is not negotiable. You carry it with confidence. And now, you walk differently. You talk differently, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You are not someone's substitute. You are not someone's backup plan. You are God's chosen original. No duplicates, no reductions, just the fullness of who you are. And that's why, chosen one, you shine. Not because the world finally saw you, but because you finally saw yourself the way God always did. Seventh, you have learned to say no. Chosen. 1. Why did it take so long for you to realize that saying no was not a betrayal of love, but an act of self-respect? Do you remember how hard it was in the beginning? Every time you whispered the word no, your heart raced like you'd committed a sin. You weren't afraid of consequences, you were afraid of disapproval. And so, time after time, you said yes. Yes to things that drained you. Yes to people who didn't value you. Yes to situations that took pieces of you and gave nothing back. You said yes, not because it felt right, but because you didn't want anyone else to feel discomfort. You sacrificed your peace for others' convenience. You remained quiet when you wanted to speak. You showed up when your soul was pleading for rest. You played the peacemaker in wars that had nothing to do with you. And behind every yes, you left a part of yourself crying quietly, wondering, when is it my turn to be heard? The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. Proverbs 29:25. You didn't realize it at first, but the more you were accepted by others, the more estranged you became from yourself. Until one day, Something shifted. A quiet realization, like a light in a dark hallway. Not every yes opens a door. Some yeses become traps, silent agreements to abandon yourself. And in that sacred moment, you drew your first boundary. Think of Simone Biles. At the height of Olympic fame, she shocked the world by saying no to continuing when her mental and emotional health were on the line. Many couldn't understand it. They called her weak. But that no was the strongest thing she ever did. It was a declaration that self-worth is not negotiable. Just like you, she chose peace over praise. You began saying no, not out of rebellion, but out of restoration. You said no to the roles you were expected to play, no to relationships that demanded you become less, no to the manipulative kindness that expected you to suffer silently. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one. Matthew 5:37. There was nothing evil about your no. It was holy. It was honest. It was healing. At first they didn't understand. What happened to you? They asked. You didn't explain. You didn't argue. Your answer was your evolution, and quietly your silence roared with a new kind of power. The power of someone who no longer betrays themselves for the comfort of others. Franz Kafka once said, "I am free, and that is why I am lost." But you, chosen one, you became free and found yourself. Every no became a path back home to the person you were always meant to be. Each no stripped away masks you'd worn for too long. The weight lessened, the anxiety faded, the guilt transformed into peace. Consider Naomi Osaka, another athlete who shocked the media by saying no to press obligations that compromised her mental health. She was criticized, but also liberated. Her choice opened the global conversation on mental well-being. That's what happens when chosen ones draw a line. They don't just protect themselves, they inspire transformation. Saying no isn't easy in a world that rewards self-sacrifice and punishes self-prioritization, but you learned. True goodness doesn't require self-abuse. You stepped away from fake friendships that only took, from communities that expected your silence, from expectations that never asked what you needed, and in doing so, you gave yourself the greatest gift of all, freedom. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. You began to treat yourself like you belonged to God, not to people's demands. And as you honored yourself, God honored you. The burdens that once felt unbearable became light. The wrong people faded, and those who truly loved you stayed, because they loved you, not the version of you that sacrificed everything just to be liked. And now, chosen one, you walk lighter. You speak slower. You answer only when your soul says yes, because you understand that not every opportunity is a blessing, and not every request deserves your presence. You don't say no out of fear anymore. You say it from fullness, because when you said no to them, you were saying yes to you. 8th, you learned to be alone. Chosen one, have you ever felt like you were surrounded by people, yet completely invisible? Have you ever laughed with others only to go home and cry into silence no one knew you were holding? Why did the crowd comfort you at first, but later leave you feeling hollow? Why did the noise begin to irritate your soul more than soothe it? There was a time you feared being alone. You filled your schedule, stayed close to anyone who would stay near, and mistook companionship for connection. But over time, you began to see the truth. Not everyone who is with you is truly for you. And perhaps the deepest form of loneliness isn't silence. It's being unseen while standing in plain sight. Though my companions are numerous, they do not understand me. Though my friends are with me, they do not share my sorrow. Job 19:19. That's when the shift began. You turned inward, away from the crowd, away from their noise. You began to listen, not to the world, but to your soul. Have you noticed how clarity often comes after everyone else has gone silent? Think of Emily Dickinson. Have you ever read her poems, so rich with mystery, depth and solitude? She barely left her house, yet her words traveled through centuries. Her isolation wasn't emptiness, it was depth. Like her, you stopped fearing the echo and started listening to the whisper, and in that whisper, you heard God. At first, the stillness felt heavy. Who would hold you if no one was there? Who would understand if no one could hear? But then you discovered the strength that only silence can give. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. That stillness became a sacred place, a secret refuge where God could speak directly to you. Have you heard the story of Isaac Newton? He was forced into solitude during the Great Plague, away from classrooms and laboratories. But in that quiet, he discovered the laws of gravity and motion. What appeared to be isolation was actually activation. God does that. He hides his chosen ones to form them in secret. You stopped chasing people who didn't have the depth to walk with you. You opened the door and let them leave. Not in bitterness, but in peace. The Lord will never leave you nor forsake you. Deuteronomy 31:6. Did you ever think the ones who left you were making space for God to move closer? You began to ask real questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe when the crowd is gone? What parts of me were real, and what was performance? Each lonely night answered a question you didn't even know you were asking. Look at Nikola Tesla, alone in his lab, misunderstood by society, forgotten by history during his lifetime, and yet he shaped the future. His solitude wasn't absence, it was revelation. You too were removed from the noise so God could whisper truths no one else was allowed to hear. The longer you stayed alone, the more you began to glow, not with the shine of performance, but with the radiance of authenticity. You didn't numb your loneliness, you let it speak. You listened to what drained you. You noticed what lifted you. You let your solitude sculpt your identity. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overwhelm you. The flame shall not consume you. Isaiah 43:2. Can you feel now how true those words are? The very silence that once scared you became the sound of your divine survival. Consider artist Marina Abramovich. Her art involves sitting in stillness, in silence, face to face with strangers, drawing out raw humanity without a word. Her most powerful moments were birthed in absolute presence. You've done the same. You faced yourself, and in that confrontation, you found clarity. So, chosen one, let me ask you, why fear solitude now when it has birthed the deepest version of you? Why chase noise when the quiet has already shown you what's eternal? You are no longer frightened by being alone, because now you know you're never truly alone. Every silent hour was a holy appointment. Every lonely night was a sacred encounter. When no one else listened, God did. And while the world clung to each other in panic, you stood still, becoming one with the only voice that mattered. You didn't just learn how to survive the silence, you learned to thrive in it. And that is why you are so powerful now. Not because you had everyone, but because you had yourself, and more importantly, you had God. Ninth, you took a risk and chose your own path. Chosen one, have you ever looked around and asked yourself, why does everyone else seem so certain of their direction, while mine feels like walking into the unknown? How many times did they offer you ready-made answers, pre-packaged lives, and call it safety? How often did you hear, don't question it, just follow the system? They handed you maps you never drew. This way is secure, they said. Everyone else is doing it. But a fire inside you refused. Why couldn't you just settle? Why didn't you feel at peace taking the easy road? Because your soul was not born to replicate, it was born to reveal. And deep down, you knew that a guaranteed life is not always a God-ordained one. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, but small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Matthew 7:13-14. You could have walked the wide road, you could have followed the crowd, but you chose the narrow one, the quiet one, the holy one. Have you ever noticed how the deeper you follow your own path, the more alone you become? Why does choosing truth separate you from people? Why do your convictions feel like a threat to those still living in imitation? Think of Vincent van Gogh. What gave him the courage to defy the artistic norms of his time? Why did he persist when critics laughed, galleries refused, and friends disappeared? Because he wasn't painting for profit. He was painting his truth. You've done the same. You didn't walk away from the crowd because you hated it. You walked away because your truth couldn't breathe there. You faced ridicule. You endured silence. People said you were lost, unstable, unrealistic. But were you really lost, or just walking where they lacked the vision to go? For we live by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. And faith, chosen one, is risky. It doesn't show you the entire road, just the next step, but you took it anyway. Have you ever stood at a crossroads where turning back looked safer, but your heart whispered, forward? You did. And though fear tried to paralyze you, your purpose pulled you, and each step, though painful, revealed more light than you expected. That's the paradox of the path God gives. It doesn't look like success, but it becomes significance. Consider Elon Musk. Before electric cars were mainstream, before rockets were reusable, he was mocked. Too ambitious, they said, impossible, but he walked it anyway. Why? Because vision rarely fits inside safety. Just like you, he wasn't trying to impress the world. He was trying to build something it had never seen before. You fell. You stumbled. You asked, am I crazy to keep going? But even your falls were sacred. They didn't drop you into despair. They dropped you into depth. You discovered that true growth doesn't happen at the peak. It happens in the pit. And that's where God met you, not in applause but in alignment. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. Psalm 37:23-24. Each fall strengthened your faith. Each delay refined your vision. What others called failure, heaven called formation. Have you ever asked yourself, why am I the only one who sees this path? That's because it was written for you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Jeremiah 1:5. Your path wasn't designed for public opinion. It was etched by divine intention. Now look at Coco Chanel, orphaned, mocked, broke. Yet she walked her own route and redefined fashion across the world. What gave her that power? Authenticity, the same authenticity you carry. She didn't just design clothes, she liberated identities. And so do you. They said you were rebellious, but in truth, you were just responsible to your calling. You didn't want imitation, you wanted intimacy with your purpose. And yes, you're still walking it. Maybe you still feel alone. But aren't you finally free? Aren't you finally breathing? Aren't you finally becoming the version of you that doesn't need to fit, perform, or apologize? You didn't choose comfort, you chose courage. You didn't choose applause, you chose alignment. And because you accepted the price, God accepted the responsibility to protect your purpose. He lit the road with his light. He walks beside you now, not because the world approves, but because you finally do. And that chosen one is why you're unstoppable, not because your path is easy, but because it's eternal. 10th, you did not follow the system they gave you. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the world has such a tight grip on what it means to be normal? Why does society reward imitation and fear imagination? Why does the system praise obedience but punish curiosity? From the very beginning they handed you a script and said, "This is how you do life." But did you ever feel that script choking you? They trained people to memorize, not to think. They designed lives like conveyor belts. Get a job, buy a house, follow the news, laugh at the same jokes, scroll through the same apps, and never ask why. Be like us, they said. Fit in. Don't ask questions. Don't make waves. But you, chosen one, were born to be the wave. They said, live like this, think like this, be like this. But your soul said, no. Why didn't you comply? Why couldn't you just mold yourself like everyone else? Because deep inside, something holy refused to be caged. You didn't just want to exist. You wanted to understand. You didn't want to recite truths. You wanted to live them. And that made you dangerous. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. That verse didn't just inspire you, it described you. You didn't reject the system out of rebellion. You rejected it because it rejected your soul. Think of Galileo Galilei. He dared to say the earth revolves around the sun, while the system of his time demanded silence. They ridiculed him, tried him, locked him away, but centuries later, the world caught up with his truth. Like you, he didn't conform to the structure. He conformed to the universe's deeper order. You too have been ahead of your time. And what does the system do to people like you? It labels you difficult, too intense, too deep. It tries to silence you or exile you. It rewards surface-level smiles and punishes those who dig. But you didn't stop. You broke the mold they built to contain you. You disturbed their comfort zones, not out of arrogance, but out of authenticity. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. You didn't conform, not because it was easy, but because you were called, even when you were alone, even when the whole structure seemed to be against you, even when they tried to make you doubt your path, your gift, your fire, you kept walking. Have you heard of Alan Turing? He cracked codes in secret to help win a world war, only to be ostracized by the very country he saved. He didn't fit their mold, but now the world reveres him. His isolation was the cost of truth. Yours has been too, but truth always rises. The system hated your questions. It feared your intensity. But those questions were never rebellion. They were revelation. You weren't trying to dismantle order. You were trying to discover divine alignment. You weren't a threat to truth. You were a threat to illusion. You were too awake to sleepwalk like the rest. So you paid the price. You lost friends. You endured ridicule. You were left out of circles and denied easy paths. But while others adapted to survive, you refused to disappear. You stayed real, and slowly that rawness became your radiance. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. John 17:16. That's why you couldn't follow the script. It was never written for you. God was writing something deeper inside you. While they looked for formulas, you sought freedom. While they memorized, you internalized. While they burned out trying to be accepted, you now shine from within. Consider James Baldwin. He wrote truths that made people uncomfortable. He challenged not just political systems, but the spiritual sleep of a generation. He wasn't here to be liked. He was here to be light. You carry that same divine friction, the kind that breaks chains and births movements. They said you were stubborn, but you were sovereign. They said you were lost, but you were just unwilling to settle. And now look, you shine, not because you followed the path they gave you, but because you walked the one God engraved into your bones. It wasn't easy, it wasn't popular, but it was true. And the truth is this: because you refused to become a slave to their system, God has set you free. Free from needing their applause, free from craving their acceptance, free to think, to feel, to love, to create, to live with your whole being. You didn't burn out from within, trying to fit in. You radiate now, because you chose to be lit by God, not by the world. 11th, you knew that silence is your greatest strength. Chosen one, have you ever felt misunderstood simply because you didn't speak? Have you ever been accused of weakness, passivity, or indifference because you chose stillness instead of reaction? Why does the world demand noise to measure presence? Why do they fear what cannot be easily read? They told you, speak up, be loud, say something, as if the absence of words equaled the absence of thought. But you, chosen one, knew better. You saw through that illusion early. While others equated silence with powerlessness, you recognized that silence is not empty, it is concentrated energy. In a world obsessed with constant expression, you chose stillness, not because you were afraid to speak, but because you were disciplined enough not to. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. Proverbs 17:28. You understood that silence isn't retreat, it's strategy. It isn't absence, it's alignment. Think of Greta Thunberg, a teenage girl who stood outside Parliament with nothing but a sign and said almost nothing. Her silence, her refusal to play the media game, sparked a global movement. Why did her stillness echo louder than speeches? Because silence, in its purest form, exposes the noise for what it is: distraction. You realized early on that speaking doesn't always mean telling the truth. Sometimes it means adapting to the narrative, repeating what's popular, or agreeing to survive. But you weren't sent here to survive. You were sent here to shift. And shifting sometimes requires you to withdraw your voice, not to disappear, but to preserve its power. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Psalm 141, verse 3. You didn't silence yourself out of fear. You did it out of reverence, for truth, for timing, and for the weight of your words. Because when the chosen one speaks, the earth must listen. But before you could be heard, you had to learn how to be silent. Have you ever noticed how silence makes people uncomfortable? Why do they squirm when you don't respond right away? Why does your quiet presence threaten those who rely on performance? Because silence reveals. It becomes a mirror that reflects their noise, their anxiety, their masks. And that is precisely why your silence is sacred. Look at Rosa Parks. When she refused to give up her seat, she didn't shout, argue, or protest with words. She simply said, no. And in that quiet resistance, she shook the foundations of injustice. That is the power you carry. Your stillness challenges systems. Your silence disrupts the script. People used to think you were holding back, but what they didn't see is that you were holding in, not suppression, but cultivation. You were growing something inside that couldn't be wasted on noise. Your silence was a womb, not a prison. It was the place where God formed unshakable strength within you. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. That stillness wasn't passivity. It was a command, and you obeyed. You waited when it would have been easier to react. You chose inner strength over outer spectacle. You chose divine discipline over emotional chaos. Consider the spiritual practice of monks like Thomas Merton. His silence wasn't just monastic, it was revolutionary. In solitude, he wrote truths that pierced through the distractions of the world. You've done the same. You've used your quiet not to disappear, but to discern. And now, you no longer just hear your voice, you hear God's within it. So, how many battles did you win simply by not reacting? How many lies crumbled because you refused to defend yourself in a place where truth didn't matter anyway? How much energy did you save by remaining silent where drama demanded your participation? Your silence became a force field. It protected your peace, your purpose, your presence, and now the world sees the glow. But they don't understand the restraint behind it. They don't realize that every word you didn't speak was a sword you could have drawn, but chose not to. God gave you this gift, not to hide but to hold, because the one who can remain calm when others panic rules the room. The one who can pause instead of proving owns their power. You became that one. You stopped burning up, trying to be heard, and now you shine without saying a word. And here's the divine truth. Silence doesn't mean the absence of voice. It means the presence of power. And because you honored it, God has honored you. He has trusted you with this sacred strength because He knew. You don't need to raise your voice to move mountains. You only need to remain in Him. 12th, you forgave and left it to karma. Chosen one, how do you respond when the ones you trusted the most leave you with wounds instead of warmth? How do you move forward when betrayal cuts so deep that your very faith in humanity begins to collapse? Have you ever looked up at the sky and asked, why me? Why was your love not enough to stop the lies? Why was your loyalty met with loss? Everyone had their moment to hurt you. Everyone had a turn with your heart. Some stole it, others shattered it. They took your trust and twisted it. They wrapped their arms around your spirit with promises of forever, only to walk away with pieces of you they never planned to return. And for a while, the pain made silence scream inside of you. But then, something holy happened. You made a decision that few ever dare to make. You chose to forgive. You didn't do it because they apologized, because many of them never did. You didn't do it because they were worthy. You did it because you were. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called. 1 Peter 3:9. It would have been easy to fight back. You could have sought revenge. You could have told your side of the story, aired their secrets, ruined their name. But instead, you chose something far more dangerous to the forces of darkness. You let go. You didn't let go out of weakness. You let go because your karma was strong. You understood that spiritual law is always working, even when the world seems lawless. You knew God sees everything done in secret, and no injustice goes unnoticed by the eyes of heaven. Think of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, tortured and silenced. And when he was finally free, did he seek revenge? No, he led with forgiveness. He said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." He chose the higher road. So did you, because you refused to become the very thing that hurt you. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. Romans 12:19. That truth became your anchor. You realize that revenge may feel satisfying in the moment, but it always ends up enslaving the soul. And you weren't sent here to be bound. You were sent to rise. You chose to keep your heart clean, even when their hands were dirty. You chose peace over power plays, light over lingering bitterness, and because of that, you were set apart. While they played in the dirt, you grew toward the heavens. Look at the story of Joseph in the Bible. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, imprisoned for crimes he didn't commit. He could have sought vengeance when he finally had the power, but instead he embraced those who wronged him and wept. Why? Because Joseph understood the divine equation. What was meant for evil, God used for good. Genesis 50:20. That's exactly what happened in your life. Have you asked yourself, why didn't I break like they expected? Because you didn't allow bitterness to rot your roots. You chose to be rooted in grace, not grief. And even now your harvest is holy because your soul stayed clean. Consider the example of Malala Yousafzai. Shot in the head for simply wanting an education, she survived. But instead of cursing her attackers, she forgave them. and became a global voice for peace. That's what divine souls do. They release what others would carry for a lifetime. They hand it over to the higher courts. You trusted karma, not the caricature, but the cosmic justice system built by God. You handed it all over, not because you didn't care, but because you cared about your destiny more than your damage. You released it all into God's design, and in doing so, you were set free. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. You didn't need to curse anyone. You didn't need to control outcomes. You just needed to trust divine order. And now, chosen one, God is honoring that choice. He is elevating you, not in spite of your pain, but because of how you handled it. And here's what they never saw coming. Your silence wasn't surrender, it was sanctification. Your forgiveness wasn't forgetting, it was freedom. And now you shine not because you were never betrayed, but because betrayal couldn't break you. Because you kept your hands clean, God is placing more in them. Because you kept your path pure, He's clearing the way forward. You didn't curse your enemies, you released them. You didn't seek revenge, you rose. And now, chosen one, the very light you walk in today is the reward for the battles you didn't fight. It's the vindication for the battles you handed over to the Most High. And as God writes the final chapters of those who wronged you, He is also writing the first chapter of your reign. Beloved chosen one, there is a verse that still echoes through eternity. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord, Romans 12:19. And you, yes, you believed it. You didn't chase vengeance, you chased virtue. While the world screamed for retaliation, you stood in reverent silence. While others wanted to take matters into their own hands, you lifted your heart into God's. And He saw it all. God was not waiting for you to fight fire with fire. He had already placed inside you something stronger than revenge, the righteousness of obedience. He gave you light to walk through darkness, victory to rise above schemes, and unshakable confidence that did not come from crowds, but from your covenant with Him. You forgave what would have destroyed others. You blessed those who betrayed you. And then you walked forward and let karma, divine justice, run its course. The universe bent in your favor because you bent your knees in surrender. You didn't win by force, you won by faith. Your strength was never in fighting back. Your real power was in knowing that you were already armed with God's armor. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Ephesians 6:11. And you wore that armor with dignity. With every attack, you rose. With every attempt to bring you down, you went higher. They tried to lure you off the path. The enemy whispered, "Follow me. There's an easier way." But you knew that ease is often the devil's disguise. You stayed with God's way, even when it was lonely, slow, or misunderstood. You remembered what God said, "The way I have given you is the way of truth." And you never strayed from it, not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful. Do you realize what you've accomplished? Not just survival, but dominion. You didn't just resist evil, you reversed its effects. While they mocked you, God mentored you. While they cursed your name, God crowned it. And now, their whispers have turned to weeping, not because you harmed them, but because they realize they never could stop you. They are crying, not for what they lost, but for what they could never control, your destiny. They tried to shape you into their image, but you stood tall in the image of God. You didn't bow to culture, you bowed to the cross. And that's why you've been elevated above the noise. Day by day, you keep walking. They're watching, still criticizing. But now they do it with trembling, because they see the favor of God surrounding you like a fortress of light. Every day you walk in your truth is a sermon without words. Every breath you take is a declaration, "I have chosen God's way, and I will not turn back." And now, chosen one, Heaven has declared it. You have won. You didn't just defeat enemies. You defeated every trap, every whisper, every spiritual obstacle that tried to shake your foundation. You walked through the fire and didn't smell like smoke. You carried pain but walked in power. You were underestimated, but now you are undeniable. This isn't the end. This is your divine coronation. This is the beginning of your inheritance. Because you were faithful when no one saw, God is about to bless you where everyone will witness. He has prepared a table in the presence of those who spoke against you, and the meal is victory. To every chosen one who made it here, who listened, who stayed with the message until the end, I want to thank you. Whether you've been through every battle described or you're still on your way, your presence here is divine confirmation. I don't take it lightly that you chose to be here. Your time, your spirit, your energy. It means everything. If this message has blessed you, if it has awakened something inside you, if it reminded you of who you truly are, I invite you to support this work through a super thanks donation. Whether you give or not, please know that I am deeply grateful for you. Your light, your attention, your engagement, that is already a divine gift. But if you feel moved to give, just know, your seed will go towards spreading this truth to more souls who are still walking through their night. May God's presence go before you. May His light never leave your path. May every seed of obedience you planted in silence blossom into visible glory. May you never lack the courage to be different, the strength to walk alone, and the wisdom to keep choosing God's way. May you be protected, elevated, and saturated in divine purpose from this day forward. And may the same God who brought you through every storm now lift you into the destiny you were born to claim. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not average. You are God's chosen one, and it is already done. Amen.